guys, thanks for coming back for another custom painting tutorial. On today's tutorial, what we're going to talk about is how to make a Deadpool. I've gotten a lot of requests for this. A lot of people have asked me for this recipe in particular. I take no credit for it. I saw it online somewhere, I think on Figure Realm or YouTube videos. And I kind of modified it a little bit for my purposes. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I made this. I actually have someone that's asked me to make them a Deadpool, so I'm going to use a very similar recipe. I'm going to tweak it just a little bit. The finished product is going to look more or less right along the same lines. Now this one does have a custom head cast that's from the Casting Cave. It's that Bowen Deadpool shrunken head cast. Very cool. But again, I'm not going to use that head cast. I'm actually going to use the regular Deadpool head. And pretty much the same exact parts, a couple tweaks here and there, but when I'm done, it's going to look just as good, if not, maybe a little bit better. Alright, so let me set him aside and we'll start talking about materials that we're going to need. Alright, first thing we're going to need a base body. Now for the base body, I really like using the Bucky Cap mold. The Bucky Cap gives us really great articulation. It's a really great body mold. It's pretty much has everything I need to make a Deadpool, with the exception of a couple of things, including the Deadpool head, which I just took off an X-Force Deadpool. I happen to have one laying around. Now, if you notice, the hole in the head is a little smaller, so I'm going to have to drill that out so it'll actually fit on the body. And the feet. These boot cuffs don't really go with the Deadpool character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out the boots with Ultimate Cap. And I've done this look before with an X-Force Deadpool and it looked really, really good. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to basically heat this up, pull these off, and then swap them. Now, we're going to talk about paint and materials and all that kind of stuff in the first part of the video, and then I'll actually get into showing you how I actually paint the figure. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to swap that with that. He's going to have the head. For the swords, I decided I'm going to go with the Leonardo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line. Those swords with the sheath that comes with him. So that'll be cool. I'm going to use this Bucky Cap belt, which is fine. I also am going to use this little Deadpool, I don't know if you guys can see that, Deadpool symbol. I grabbed that off the Marvel Select Deadpool. And I'm going to use the Red Skull shoulder holster. I'm going to go ahead and leave the gun red. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to touch up the black right there, because I think that would be kind of cool for Deadpool to have a red gun. It makes more sense for him to have a red gun than, say, Red Skull. So I'll leave that. Of course, he'll have his knife and pistol. The person that wants this didn't send it to me, so I can't customize that just yet. So for prep work, all I've done so far is I've taken off the belt. It's a separate piece. I'll paint that separately. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take these off, and then I'm actually going to start disassembling the figure. It's important once you get the figure all the way disassembled that you want to wash the figure in soapy water. It helps get a lot of the mold release off, so that when you go to paint it, it takes the paint. So to get the figure completely disassembled or unassembled, what I do is I usually get a cup of hot water. You can use a hairdryer, but I find this method works a little bit easier. And I'm just going to plop them in and let him set for a little bit. So while he's setting, let's go ahead and talk about paint. So for the character, what I'm going to do is once I get them all disassembled, I'm going to paint each of the pieces with flat black. And I like to use the Model Master acrylic paints. I've used other stuff. This is the stuff I keep coming back to. It's really good. It's thin. It puts on a nice thin layer. And if you use this, you really don't have to use a sealer on it if you do it right. So I'm going to use that. For the straps and this belt, I have some of this leather color, which what I usually do is I paint everything black and then I dry brush this on, and I'll explain how we're going to dry brush. And for Deadpool himself, the person wants him to have a bright red costume, which I'm fine with. I normally use this Citadel Mephiston red as my Deadpool, and it comes out looking like this. So I'm going to probably use a little bit of that, but I've got two other reds. This one here is a little bit brighter red, so I might actually use this for all the highlights and do a really, really super light layer with the Mephiston as an undercoat with the black. And I've also got this other red too, which I haven't used yet. It looks kind of cool. So we'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to do that. As far as brushes go, really, you know, you can buy the really expensive brushes. I don't. I usually buy the Walmart ones. I've got a couple like this for just putting your flat black on. This is my dry brushing brush, and if you notice, it's beat to shit because I use it all the time. And acrylic paint, you just, you know, you keep a cup of water handy, and then you rinse out your brush. And then I also have a little detail brush as well. That'll be for like doing Deadpool's eyes. And that's really what I use. I use, you know, 3 or 4 brushes primarily. So let me take the brushes aside. Now, a thing you want to do is when you start disassembling the figure, is get little glasses. Now I'm using shot glasses for this, but I do one for left, one for right. That way you don't mess it up. It just helps, so you know where your parts go. A lot of times the parts are going to be labeled, but just in case they're not. So his leg should be good and weak by now. So if you notice, I can just kind of bend the leg like that. All I'm going to do is pop off the leg, set that aside, because I'm not going to use these at all. I'll go ahead and put cap in the back so he can start. Now I've got his knee joints. Again, I want to kind of keep these all one piece. So what I'm going to do is, I usually use, now I can't find them. I usually use these pair of like jeweler's wrench pieces, and it makes it real super easy for popping this stuff in and out. But because it's so easy, you can really do it with your fingers too. Here they are. They're these. This is what I usually use to pop these little pegs out. Now on the pegs, one side is smaller than the other, so you always want to go that way. You don't want to try to rip it through the hole. All you're trying to do is trying to get it up so it's up like that. And then you can just grab it. There we go. And you can grab it. So you want to make sure that you keep the pegs intact if you can. Doesn't always happen, but I can put that in there. And then I'm just going to do his knee. Now when you heat up the plastic, one thing you'll notice is that if you don't work quickly, it starts to harden back up. There, now his knee is out. Okay, and his knee is labeled with an L, and it's got an arrow going up, so you know which way it goes. That's good. Put that over there. So let's go ahead and get the other one off real quick. And all I'm doing is the little holes on the outside of the leg, just pushing in. Got his little pin. Let's go ahead and get this pin. So again, and now I'm going to leave it that way. Now I could take these off, but there's really no need. You know, I'm going to go ahead and leave them on. I will end up disassembling the arm the same exact way. But let me set him aside, and what I'll do now is I'll turn his arms up so they can actually go in the water. You can pop his hands out too, that helps if you want to sand down the joints. We're going to talk about sanding in a second. So set him aside, let's go ahead and grab the other cap. And this one, all I'm doing is I'm just going to pull the bottom feet off, because that's the part I'm going to need. And it just comes off really easy. Try not to pull too much, because you don't want to wear out that hole. You're going to need that when you go to put it back on. There we go. And for those of you guys, this body, this cap, is a great custom figure's dream. I mean, it's a great body mold. It's the Shield Agent body mold, with the exception of the gloves down here. So, I mean, it's a great body mold. It comes with a lot of cool parts. You know, usually if I see these on sale or something like that, I think Big Bag Toy Store has them for like $6. I need to get a couple more, because I use them all the time for different projects. But anyway, I'm going to set him aside. He goes back in the fodder bin. And now what I'm left with is I have my boots. And I have my other parts separated. And what I'll do is now I can pull. Again, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull off. Nope, doesn't want to pull off. Get my little holes on the outside, so let's go ahead and pop these off. And sometimes this is kind of the tricky part, is getting the figure disassembled. That doesn't want to come out. There it goes. Oh, sorry about that. Bumped the camera. So there, I've popped it out, and then when I go to do this again, I'm going to actually have to heat this up to put it back on. So now I can actually work with this piece right here. So, and that does not want to come out. So again, if it doesn't want to come out, you can always just pop it back in the water. That'll help. Let's see if this one's any easier. Nope, not really. So I'm going to pop this guy back in the water for a little bit longer, just so he's all the way good. And what I'm going to do is, once he's all the way disassembled, I'll go wash him up real quick, make sure he's completely dry, and then everything is going to get a flat black base coat. Everything. The other thing I'm going to have to do is I'm also going to have to sand the joints. If you don't want paint rub, that's where when the figure moves after it's been painted, you don't want that paint to come off. You really need to sand the joints. Now, what I like to do is I like to sand them, give them the base coat that they're going to have, and then seal them. And that way, when the figure moves, it has that sealer underneath all the paint. So even if it does rub a little bit, it still has that base coat there. So I'll probably go ahead and do that too. To sand the joints, I have my Dremel right here somewhere. I use a Dremel. That seems to be the easiest thing to use. And of course I can't find it. This is what happens when you try to do this in a hurry. Anyway, I'll show it to you guys in the next segment anyway, when we start getting into actually more prep work with the figure. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the video here. You guys saw how I took apart everything, the first part of the arm. Let's try this again. Again, you want to make sure you get the little part. Make sure I just pull this right off. There. So now the figure's more or less disassembled the way I want it. So that's what it's going to look like. That's my base figure. When I'm talking about sanding the joints, these shoulder joints, I need to sand those down so when the shoulder moves, it doesn't scrape the paint. There we go. So there, take that off. And let's get this one off. There's no right or wrong way to do this, really. I mean, it's however you want to do it. I'm trying to be careful so I don't poke my fingers. That sucks when it happens. It does. That's one of the problems with working custom work, is you can get hurt if you're not careful between this and razor blades. That just does not want to come out. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're free it up this way. There it goes. Stubborn. But if you just do it slowly, you can actually get it to come out without hurting the peg. See, now the peg's completely intact, which is good, because I'm going to need that. This comes out. Arm is a little bit of scrape mark, but that's okay. Paint will cover that right up. And I have my peg, and I have my elbow joint. I'm good to go. So I set that aside. I'm probably not going to take apart the hand, because what I can do is I can just paint that real quick. With these wrist joints, though, you will get a little bit of paint rub. There's really no way around that. It's just the way that they're made. So if you can, the way you cheat is you find one that has a red disc. I don't happen to have one handy, so I'll have to do the best I can to kind of seal that up, make sure it doesn't rub or anything like that. That's pretty much it. And then I gotta go get my other. There we go. It's good and hot. Alright, we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to go ahead and finish disassembling this, and then I'll start putting the, get the figure ready so we can do some sanding, and then we'll do the base coat together. Alright, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. This has been US Agent 27. We'll be back in a few minutes, okay? Alright, so we're back. What I've done is I've gone ahead and we've disassembled the figure, like I said before. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the joints. Like I was talking about before, whenever you're doing custom figures, one of the customizer's worst enemy is paint rub, and that's where when the joint moves, a little bit of paint flecks off. Even the figures that we get, like from like Toy Biz, for example, some of those older figures, they had paint rub. I mean, it's nearly impossible to avoid it unless you take some precautions. One of the things that we can do as customizers is we can actually sand down the joints, which that means basically just taking a Dremel and kind of sanding right there and going all the way around so that when it moves, it gives it a little bit of room in between so the paint doesn't rub. Or you can actually pick your parts carefully. Like I said, what I've done in the past with Deadpool, for example, is I'll pick a character that has black shoulder pegs, just make it easier on myself because I know that's going to stay black. Now I don't actually have one handy, so I'm going to use this one. And I have used Bucky Cap before, and as long as I sand the joints, I should be okay, and Lewis should be happy. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my Dremel. I use a cordless Dremel. I do have a regular Dremel as well, but I like this one because I get a little bit more control. It's just a little cordless Dremel, and then I've got a sanding tip right there. And then the other tip I like to use is this one, which I think is called a jeweler's tip. I use this to actually drill out the hole for the head, which I'll do later on. But right now I'm just going to basically lightly sand down the joints. And I can't stress this enough, when you're doing this, make sure you're careful. You don't want to sand too much. Just enough. So that when it moves, it's got room to apply the paint. And if you are going to do this, you should really be wearing safety goggles. I don't have any right now. So I should be very, very careful. There we go. So that's basically the neck joints done. Turn my Dremel off. And that's really all I need to do. I'm going to do the same thing on the shoulder joints. And I already started doing that before I started recording this. So now what's going to happen is when I go to paint this, I'm going to put a very light layer of paint on the joints. So when they move, you guys can see that, it shouldn't scrape off the paint. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the video right here for a second. When we come back, we'll start actually base coating the paint on the figure. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and black base the figure, including all the other parts I disassembled, including like the elbows, the arms, the legs, all that fun stuff. So I have my Testors flat black paint ready to go. I'm going to go again and get my brush. We can get started. Now when we go to do the joints, I'll show you what I normally do. Is I do a very, very, like, almost like a dry brushing on the joints. But basically this entire figure by the time I get done is going to be black. And then what I can do is, then comes the fun part. My favorite part of painting figures is like doing the dry brushing. I really like to see the figure kind of come to life. Not that it's not, you know, this isn't a very nicely painted figure, it is, but there's a lot of little things in the sculpt that when you dry brush, it will pick that right up, and it's gonna, you know, you'll see things that you didn't really maybe not notice before. Again, I'm just gonna kind of go over the neck joint, and even the areas that are already black, they're getting another coat of paint as well. And I'm not really worried about doing it too neat because everything's gonna be black. Where it had the red and the white, you have to go back over that. And now we're going to do the sides. And then we're going to get inside the disc. Again, I'm just kind of dry brushing that in so that it gets a coat of paint on there. And we'll go ahead and do the back. And you notice the back has a lot of detail in the sculpt that's really going to pop once we start doing the dry brush technique. I'm going to show you guys. Again, I don't have to be really too neat with this. I can just kind of go over it. I don't want to use a ton of paint. I kind of want to, you know, do very, very light layers. That's the key when you're painting figures like this, is do extremely light layers. Less is more. You can always add more paint, but you can't take paint away once you put it on, unless you want to strip the figure, and that's just a pain in the butt. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of go over, get the neck joint. I really like the Tester's paint because it really dries very, very quickly, which is great. So I can actually get this entire figure done today if I really wanted to, if I had all the parts to do it. Between all the painting and then reassembly and then sealing. I usually do seal my figures. I will go over that later on in the video. Yeah, I'm just kind of going over. Just trying to get all the little nooks and crannies. Make sure you move the joints around. That will help. So like that joint's already done, so I can move this down, and then I can go ahead and just get it in there. Again, I'm doing really light layers because I do want, on the body anyway, you're going to see some red. Up here at the top, it's all going to be black, so it's okay to get it all the way done. Again, I'm just put another coat of paint up here. Hit anywhere where you see color still. Again, this is going to be all black. I'm going to move the neck back. Get the abs in there. Get the back. Again, it's almost like I'm dry brushing this, but I'm not really. I'm just kind of going back over all the areas. And then what I'll do is once I get down to the bottom, once it starts to dry a little bit, I will hit the legs with a coat of paint. Even though they're black anyway, I'm still going to hit all of it. So I'm going to just set that down for a second. And then I can start painting some of these other pieces. Again, I know that they're black, but what happens is when you put just a quick coat of paint on these, it just helps that second coat of paint I'm going to put on there with the dry brush technique, helps it stay. There we go. So again, I'm not worried about doing too much here. And you will get your hands dirty, so don't worry about that. More paint. Now some people, what they would do is they would assemble the figure and paint it. I like taking it all the way apart because that way I can make sure I get all the little pieces, you know, and get them so that they're 100% done. Put that down. Now at the joint, the knee joint. Yeah, this is I think the knee joint here. So I'm just gonna kind of dry brush. I don't want to put too heavy paint on here because I don't want this to rub off, and I really don't like sanding knee joints if I don't have to. And if I do very light layers and I seal it when I'm done, I don't usually have to sand them. Some people, they will sand these joints down, and I don't know, it just doesn't look right when they're done. I've done it, and I don't like the results I usually get, so I just like to do a little bit of light layer. And for here, I'm not really going to worry about painting the red just yet, because I can always paint that later on once the figure's all the way assembled again. Again, I'm just trying to get a little bit of light layer paint on there, almost like dry brushing it. And then I can go back and I can get this piece here that I missed at the top. Get a bit more paint. There we go. Okay, you don't want to coat it in paint, but you want to just kind of get it. It's got paint on there. So now I can come up to my figure. Probably not a good idea to set him down on the paper towel. I just thought about that, but that's okay. Kick him back. So now I can get the other part. Again, just put a little coat of paint there. I'm going to put extra coats on the chest because that's where the majority of the factory paint was. I want to make sure I get that so it's 100% covered up. And I will also move out the shoulder. If you guys can see that, there's a little bit of blue tucked in there. So I need to make sure I get that. That's my cat crying. He's mad because he can't get my lap right now. Just sitting on this side. Now the joints and the shoulder joints like that, you might have to do more than one coat on these. You know, I've had figures that, you know, had very, very stubborn joints as far as getting all the paint on there. But usually if you do light layers, you can go over a couple times and then you're good. So let's check the neck joint. So again, just doing the neck joint. And if you look on the neck's pretty good. It's not rubbing, which is good. So that's very good. I like that. So again, that's just black basing the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here. I'm going to get the body all the way situated, and then I'll show you what our next step is going to be. Alright, so I hope you guys are enjoying this. If you guys do like these types of videos, you know, definitely leave me a comment, let me know, and I'll do more. But I figure, you know, this would be a kind of good way to show everyone how to make your own Deadpool, since the Hasbro Deadpool is a pain in the butt to get. Alright guys, thanks again. Alright, what we're going to do is we are going to start putting the figure back together. Off camera, what I did is I took the discs. Actually, I can't see, can you? I took the disc. I don't know if you guys can see. I painted red on the inside. I left that part black because I do want the dry brushing to bring that out. And if I paint it a solid color, it won't look right. So I have those separated. I did the boots a little bit. I just put a quick coat of black on them. This will all be black as well. And then now I'm going to dry brush red over this. I might do the tops black. I haven't decided quite how I'm going to do that yet. But those are going to look good. The figure, I've gotten all black. I've gotten all in the grooves. It's looking pretty good so far. So I'm going to start putting them back together so I can actually start putting the dry brushing. So to do that, I have a little cup of hot water. And this is probably the easiest way to do this. Is I'm going to take my little bicep pieces and throw them in. I'm going to throw both of those in and let those sit for a few minutes. And then what I can do is I can actually attach those to the figure and then start putting the arms back on. And then I can start attaching the legs, putting the legs back on. And then probably what I'll do is I probably won't put the feet back on just yet. I haven't decided yet. And then I'll start actually doing the detail work on the figure. So all in all, today so far we've spent probably about, you know, between off and on camera, about an hour. Doing custom figures doesn't really take that long. You know, you just have to know what you're doing. I've made this figure in particular, you know, a bunch of different times. So I kind of have an idea exactly what I'm doing. So let me go ahead and get those pieces out. They're probably good enough for now. Yep, they're warm. Ow. So now you want to, on the inside of each one, there's actually a letter which tells you if it's the right or the left. Actually, it's not quite hot enough yet. Let that set for a few more minutes. There'll be a letter that tells you if it's the right or the left, and then that'll tell you which side of the figure it's going to go on. The other thing you could do too is I actually have another Bucky cap. I have a bunch of these laying around. This one's going to be a dark Hawkeye eventually once I get around to finishing it. I can actually look at this one and kind of judge which arm goes on which way by the muscle definition. That's another way you can do it. And the water is very, very hot. And all I do for the water is I actually just do this in my Keurig real quick. Oh, there we go. and that's enough to kind of give me what I'm looking for. Oh, where's the stupid letter? I think that's the right letter. And I'm just going to put this on. And now his arm's starting to go on. And you want to make sure it's right. So if you get on my sheet, I'm just going to look at my figure and make sure that matches up what it's supposed to match up. And it looks like it does. So now then the other one that's in there is going to be for the other arm. So let me go ahead and get that. Okay. Again, all I'm doing is I'm just going to put it in, and then it's going to pop on, and we're going to be good to go. So now he has arms. So we're not quite done yet. We got to do the elbow joints. Again, to do the elbows, there's usually an arrow on them. So this is the right. This is telling me it's going up. So this is the right one. It should be like that. And then I have this one, should be like this. I didn't check that. Yeah, it should be like that. Again, you want to always make sure you put it back the right way. It's going down, so it should be, I believe, like that. Doesn't look quite right, but let me double check. No, it goes the other way. This is why you always want to double check before you get it all the way put back together. There we go. So it goes like that. So now we have our figure. Again, I have the inside painted red. That's going to help out with paint rub issues like we were talking about before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start putting the rest of them together. If you notice, I scraped a little bit of paint right there already in black. I see that. And that's when you're doing a figure, when I do it for myself, you know, little things like that usually don't bother because I can touch it up as I need to. But this is actually going to somebody, so I'm going to take my time and make sure I get all those little things right exactly before I send it out. So what I'm going to do is, when we come back, I'll probably sand that down just a little bit, put more paint on it, let it dry, and I'm going to seal this entire area and this entire area anyway, as well as up here too, before I start putting the other paint. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and pop his arm joints back in. And this is the same thing you would do if you want to swap parts. So if you want to have a figure and you want to give them, you know, different arms or whatever. Same thing, just heat it up and swap it out and paint it. Alright, so I'm going to let him sit for a little bit and then we'll go ahead and continue. Alright, what we're going to do now is we are going to dry brush some red onto the figure. And again, this is going to go kind of messy. And then what will happen is I'll tighten it back up once I apply the black paint and I do all the costume details and whatnot. So for the red, I'm going to go ahead and try the Citadel Evil Sun's Scarlet, which I've never used before, but it's a nice bright red, which is what my customer kind of wanted. So to dry brush, it's really easy, and it really does make the figure look awesome. Take your paintbrush. I'm using my crappy paintbrush. Get a little bit of paint. And then on a rag, as you can kind of see, you want to basically dab it until there's barely any paint on it. And then you just want to kind of go over the figure. Like so. And again, I'm going to just pretty much do the areas that I know are not going to be covered by black. Not really waste my time doing other areas. And what will happen is you can kind of see it's starting to take shape, starting to take form. So it's a little light, so I'm going to throw a little bit more paint. Trying this on camera is kind of difficult. And again, I'm going to go kind of heavier. I actually do like this red for Deadpool. It's a nice bright red. I usually go with a little bit darker red, but I think this is actually going to work pretty well. And this is where I was talking about before. You'll see that the sculpt lines, if you do this the right way, and if you really just kind of layer it, like how I'm doing, you'll see that it really brings out the sculpt. Let me see if I can push that forward. My lighting over here is kind of horrible, but a little bit more paint. And you just work in small sections. I'm going to push his chest all the way back, just so I can kind of again, you know, Deadpool has a pretty basic costume, so you really can't mess this up, to be honest with you. Why don't you take your time and just, you know, kind of go over it. And again, I'm going to just go over kind of a little bit darker than I normally would, only because my customer did want it to be kind of red. What's happening is that black is settled in where all the indentations in the sculpt are, so it actually really brings it out really nicely. And it looks pretty badass. For his arms, you can do it like how I did this Deadpool, where, where it's got like the line in it. I did that kind of after the X-Force Deadpool I had, but I've also done other ones where I've just done like a straight line. It really depends. So right now I don't really need to make that call anyway, but I'm just going to kind of throw some paint on there. And then I can always tighten it up with the black. And really all I'm doing right now is just trying to get a little base coat of paint. I can apply other reds that'll help give it some definition as well. I can go heavier on the paints in certain areas. And this is why I painted the disc first before I actually assembled the figure, because it does make it a little easier, so you don't have to worry about paintwork or anything like that. And again, I'm just kind of moving my brush back and forth, kind of fanning it in a way. Whenever I do this, all I can think about is Bob Ross painting his happy little trees. That's really kind of what you're doing. I'm painting happy little biceps. Again, what'll happen is I'll also go through and I'll probably paint the gloves black, and then I'll dry brush some of this red on there, and it'll look really, really nice when it's done. It doesn't really have to be perfect, because you want some of the black to show through, but you also want it to look, good. And I really hope you guys are liking this custom video. And that's basically one arm done, for the most part. Again, I can always touch up later on with the black. And I gotta say, this Bucky mold that they use is really super nice as far as the muscle definition. It's a really, really nice mold. I really enjoy using. I've used it on a bunch of different figures. But anyway, sorry, I know you guys can't see that. So again, I'm just gonna kind of go through, and like this whole process only takes a couple minutes. But really, this is where you really see the figures start to come to life, and you get to see all the costume detail kind of pop. There we go. You just want to kind of eye it as far as how heavily saturated you want to go. Like I said, I normally do lighter I like to do light layers, and then I can always layer the paint. When I first started doing this, I did really heavy layers of paint because I thought I needed that in order to cover it. But really, if you do nice light layers, those black undertones that you work so hard to keep actually show right through. And that's really what you want. There we go. And then what'll happen, and if you go up too high, like I just went a little too high right there, that's alright. I'm going to get that with the black, and it'll be good. So now we have Deadpool, we have his arms more or less done. Well, my cat's... The nice thing about when you dry brush is you can go over another area real quick. Like I'm noticing like the chest and the stomach, I want to get that really nice and deep red. I may actually hit that with a different red too. Sorry guys, I'm trying to keep this on camera so you guys can see. Make sure you get the neck joint because you know his neck is red for his costume details, and that looks good. And that's basically what we're going to do. Now what I'm going to do with the rest of the figure, I'm not going to show on camera, is I'm going to go all the way down the figure, and I'll do the back side as well. And what I'll do is I'll come back when we get to actually start doing some of the costume details, okay? Alright, so keep watching, I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so now that you guys have come back, what I've gone ahead and done is I've gone ahead and I already did all the dry brushing. I completed that all out for the most part, and it looks pretty good. As far as Deadpool's costume, like I said before, it's pretty basic. He's got black shoulder balls, and he's got two lines that are going to come down here, and then what I usually do is I'll do his little black patches on the side, and I'll cut it right at the thigh cut. That way the articulation doesn't interrupt with the costume detail. I can't stand that. And then I also dry brush some red on his boots, and then I'll touch these up with black. I'll probably paint the tips black and the tops black and leave the rest like dry brush red. I think that looks kind of cool. Looks something like what Deadpool would do. And then we can go ahead and start putting on the costume accessories, including like the shoulder harness, the belt, all that fun stuff. I went ahead and I trembled out the head. So now the head also fits on there pretty good. And I trimmed underneath this jaw a little bit so it doesn't rub. Again, paint rub is a customizer's worst enemy. Let me back that up a little bit. There we go. So I have the head. So the head's obviously going to have to be painted. I usually do the head last because, I don't know, I just do. So pop that off. So what we're going to do is we're going to start doing some of the detail work. Now I'm not going to do all of it on camera, but I'll just show you what, the way I normally do it. I'm going to use my little brush and my black paint. So again, this is personal preference how you want to do this. I usually kind of start at the top and I work my way down. And again, Deadpool's costume, there are different variations on it. The way I usually do it is kind of modeled after the Hasbro one, where it's got like the two, it goes in, down, and then out, and then black. So I'll probably do that again. Again, all I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to draw some lines. And again, if you screw this up, it's not the end of the world, because you can always go back and fix it. Again, all I'm doing is I'm drawing two black lines. And just now I'm just eyeballing it. That looks kind of even. So now I'm just going to go ahead and bring this out to about there, and bring this back about there. And that gets that side going. Again, I'm just going to throw some black paint over here just so you guys can kind of see what I'm looking at. So it's going to come in, down, and then it's going to come back this way. And what you want to do is kind of keep a line that goes even with that. That's going to help If you guys can kind of see that, what I did to a line that's even with the sculpt, because that is really going to help out. Like, we'll just keep this even here, this even here. And that little nub right there you're not going to see, but this other areas you will. So let's go ahead and get these real quick. Again, I could do this with a larger brush, and I will go back over these areas with a bigger brush. I'm just kind of doing the outline right now, but just so you guys can kind of see on camera what it's starting to look like. It's looking pretty good. And again, if you screw something up, don't worry about it. You can always go back and fix it. So I'm going to come back. So let's see, it's going to go up. And come up. Like that. I think on my buddy Steve's Deadpool, I must have redid the chest at least twice. Because the first time I did it, I didn't like how it was coming out. I think I went too skinny in. And it just didn't quite look right to me, so I went back and fixed it. Alright, so now I'm going to come down. Just go paint that side real quick just so I can kind of see how it's looking. Again, I can always make little adjustments as you go through. And if you did make a mistake on this section, it's no big deal. You can just always, just because it's black, dry brush right over and start over. And there's been a couple times I've had to do that. But that's looking pretty good. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut that, start cutting that in. There we go. Cut that in, and go ahead and start cutting this in here. There we go. And I just cut it right on the inside of these little, I don't know what you call them, nubs, where he had his belt piece. And what that's going to do is when I line up the figure like that, it's going to help keep it symmetrical. And it's going to help me so I can actually do my lines down here. Doing the lines on the side is kind of a pain, but you can see how the figure's starting to take shape. It's looking pretty good if I do say so myself. I think that I'll be able to get a lot of the black done tonight, let it set, and then I'll just double check it, make sure it looks good, throw the harness on it. The other nice thing too is, even if I didn't get this 100% perfect here, it's going to have a shoulder harness on it, which takes away from a lot of the paint work. So you won't notice little things. If I'm like a little bit off on this side, because this side looks like might be a little small, you really won't notice that once the shoulder harness is on. So that's good. You can kind of cheat that way. But yeah. And then to do the back, again, I'm just going to kind of look at the top where I have my line. And I think Deadpool's costumes go straight back, so he's got a mark. I'll do it down here. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't mean to move the camera that way. I like to use his articulation as my guide. Like, I'm not going to do any crazy design in the back or anything like that, but, you know, go halfway down his butt. Right there. Again, this is just to kind of mark my lines. And then we'll go ahead and arch this up. Here we go. You guys get the idea, you know. Again, you can do this however you want. I've never really seen any pictures of Deadpool's back, so I kind of made up the costume details. I think I got it from the Hasbro figure. It's kind of how it was laid out. And the really nice thing about this tester's paint is it dries very quickly. But that also means you gotta move quick. So I think I'm gonna cut the video after I get this little shoulder piece done right here. Again, that's starting to look pretty good. Now I'll do the same thing on the other side. If you guys notice, I forgot the dry brush right there, so I have to go back and do that. But that's what the front of him looks like. He's looking pretty good. So again, just take your time doing the costume details, and then I'll come back when it's ready to start adding some accessories to the figure, and we'll get them done, and you guys will see the Deadpool from pretty much start to finish. Alright, be back. Alright guys, thanks for coming back for the conclusion of this tutorial video. So we have Deadpool pretty much all assembled. I'm just going to do one or two quick little touch-ups. But just to kind of go over what I did, you guys saw in the last segment, I did a lot of dry brushing on the figure. And then it's just a matter of going over with the black and kind of touching up all your lines, make sure that they look even. I went ahead and I glued on his Deadpool belt buckle, and it looks actually really, really good. I really like the way that came out. Painted his holsters brown, dry brushed over just over the black. For the harness, I decided to go with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Leonardo harness, which comes with these swords. Now, the swords are kind of small for Deadpool, so I don't actually think I'm going to give him those, but this is the sword that comes with the X-Force Deadpool, and you're going to see it fits really, really nicely, and it looks really, really nice. So my customer actually has a set of these already, so I think that, you know, I'll give him these swords for sure, but I don't know if I'm going to go to all the trouble of painting him or not. Anyway, the figure came out really, really well. I'm actually really happy with the way it came out. There's only, like I said, one or two touch-ups I have to do. I want to touch up the silver on the buckles right there. And then I just need to dry brush a little bit of red on my knee joints to make sure that those are good. And then I'll probably end up spraying the figure with dull coat, just so it protects the paint a little bit. The Citadel paint is good, but it's not as good as the Tester's paint. The Tester's paint, you don't need a sealer with it. The Citadel, you typically do. It's kind of not chalky, but I don't know. There's just, it's a good idea to seal the paint, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. I think he came out really good. I'm really happy with him. I just took the Red Skull gun. I painted the handles black and set that in there. So now Deadpool's got his little red gun. And if he doesn't like that, he can always swap it out with one of the other guns. Like I said, he's already got the knife and pistol. So yeah, I think Deadpool came out really good. You guys can definitely do this at home. It retains full articulation. Oh yeah, this little collar I took off an X-Force Deadpool I had laying in my fodder box. So that's where that came from. But yeah, he came out really, really nice. I like the way that this looks. I think that from now on I'll probably use that again and again. It wasn't bad. I mean, you're paying like $8 for the sheaths and, you know, these cheapo swords. I had a couple other accessories I could give Deadpool too, but again, the only thing I don't like about it is the shoulder harness here. I had the same problem with like the Nick Fury and the Punisher, not Nick Fury that had it, is it kind of does hinder articulation a little bit, but you can get around it. I think, you know, I've thought about on mine, like actually pushing these in and then gluing them there so they stay in place. But I like the idea that it's removable if you know, he wants to remove it. So I think I'll leave it that way. But overall, this has been our custom Deadpool. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Hope you guys got a chance to make your own Deadpool. And keep on subscribing. Come back for more videos. If you guys want to see another custom tutorial, let me know. I did do the Bulldozer custom, which I actually plan on redoing. Now that I want to kind of do it in the style of the unreleased Bulldozer. I think that'd be kind of cool. So I think that'll probably be coming up soon. But anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed it. Make sure you guys come back and subscribe for more videos. Thanks.